Bill Maher shares one Hollywood star who won't be returning to his show. Bill Maher is no stranger to guests, whether it was politically incorrect or his current HBO series, Real Time with Bill Maher. However, things don't always turn out well once a guest comes to the stage. Recently, he opened up about a star that isn't returning to his show anytime soon. Bill Maher recently discussed a past real-time guest on his podcast series. Maher is a comedian and television personality known for his political satire. From 1993 to 2002, he hosted Politically Incorrect for ABC and Comedy Central. Since 2003, Maher has hosted Real Time with Bill Maher for HBO. Since 2022, he has also hosted the podcast Club Random. During a recent episode of his podcast, Maher spoke with Max Amini and discussed one guest who has refused to return to his HBO show. This was Ben Affleck, following an argument during his 2014 appearance. During the original episode, the panel was talking about Islamic extremism, with the actor sharing he had been receiving hate for saying that liberals need to stand up for liberal principles. For his part, Maher shared, "All I'm saying is that liberal principles like freedom of speech, freedom to practice any religion you want without fear of violence, freedom to leave a religion, equality for women, equality for minorities, including homosexuals. These are liberal principles that liberals applaud for." He continued, "But then when you say in the Muslim world, this is what's lacking, then they get upset." As he continued, Maher felt that certain comments got exaggerated, and for some reason it got emotional. He admitted that these types of debates usually make an impression on his audiences. He shared, "More people mentioned that episode to me than anything. It wasn't the best episode we ever had, but it got emotional with a movie star. That, America." This isn't the first time this episode has been discussed on the podcast. Harris himself had previously shared that he and Affleck buried the hatchet over the debate. However, Maher felt that he hasn't yet had that opportunity to reconcile with the actor. What is your reaction to Bill Maher's recent share? Have you been following this story? Make sure you come back to TV Shows Ace for all the latest TV and celebrity news. Bill Maher reveals the Hollywood star who won't be returning to his show. Bill Maher has opened up about one of the most talked-about celebrity disagreements from his long-running television career, and revealed that the Hollywood star at the center of the controversy still has no plans to return to his show. The revelation involves Oscar-winning actor Ben Affleck, whose memorable appearance on Real Time with Bill Maher in 2014 ended in a heated debate that has remained part of the show's history for more than a decade. According to Maher, the disagreement was significant enough that Affleck has declined repeated invitations to return. Maher recently discussed the situation on his Club Random podcast, where he reflected on the famous confrontation and the possibility that the two could eventually find common ground. A decade-old argument still making headlines. The original confrontation took place during an October 2014 episode of Real Time. Affleck appeared alongside Maher and podcaster Sam Harris for a discussion involving Islam, extremism, and the treatment of religion. What began as a political discussion quickly became one of the show's most intense exchanges. Affleck strongly objected to comments made by Maher and Harris, arguing that their broader criticism of Islam unfairly stereotyped millions of people. The actor became visibly emotional during the discussion and challenged the language being used on the panel. The exchange quickly went viral and became one of those television moments that continued to be discussed long after the episode aired. More than 10 years later, Maher says the disagreement still has consequences. Ben Affleck hasn't returned. During his recent Club Random discussion, Maher revealed that he has continued inviting Affleck back to Real Time over the years. But Affleck has apparently declined. Maher said he still loves and respects the actor, even though they continue to disagree about the substance of their 2014 argument. He suggested that enough time has passed that perhaps there could eventually be a more productive conversation between them. The comedian also indicated that he remains open to settling the matter privately. That detail is particularly interesting because MAHER doesn't appear to view the disagreement as a personal feud in the traditional Hollywood sense. Instead, he seems to see it as a major political and philosophical disagreement that became unusually emotional because it happened in front of cameras. "I love him," MAHER says. MAHER's comments suggested that there is still admiration for Afolk despite the unresolved tension. Rather than portraying the actor as someone he dislikes, MAHER emphasized that the two simply remain divided on the issue. That distinction matters. Celebrity feuds often involve personal insults, broken friendships, or public accusations. In this case, the disagreement appears to have been rooted primarily in political and religious views. MAHER has continued discussing controversial subjects throughout his career, while Afolk has generally maintained a lower profile when it comes to political television debates. Their different approaches may help explain why the 2014 moment has never really been revisited on real time. Why the 2014 debate became so famous. The argument attracted enormous attention because it involved two recognizable Hollywood figures taking very different positions on a highly sensitive issue. Afolk was not simply another guest disagreeing with MAHER. He was a major movie star who openly challenged the host during a live television discussion. The emotional nature of the exchange made it even more memorable. MAHER himself acknowledged that people continue to bring up the episode to him years later. He reportedly described it as one of the moments from the show that audiences mention most frequently. Ironically, the controversy may have made the episode more famous than many of MAHER's calmer and more thoughtful interviews. It became a snapshot of the kind of political disagreement that real time has built its identity around. MAHER says there could still be middle ground. Despite the long silence, MAHER hasn't completely closed the door. He suggested that perhaps speaking privately could eventually lead to a better understanding. More than a decade has passed since the original argument, and both men have experienced major changes in their careers and public lives. MAHER's willingness to discuss the possibility of reconciliation is notable. Rather than saying Afolk is permanently banned from the program or that he would never invite him again, MAHER appeared to leave the door open. The bigger question is whether Afolk feels the same way. As of the latest reports, there has been no public indication that Afolk is preparing to return to real time. His representatives also did not immediately respond to requests for comment about MAHER's recent remarks. The Hollywood star who still won't come back. For viewers who remember the original episode, MAHER's revelation is likely to bring the controversy back into the spotlight. Afolk remains one of Hollywood's most recognizable actors, while Real Time continues to be one of MAHER's signature platforms. The combination makes the possibility of a reunion particularly intriguing. Imagine Afolk returning more than a decade later and sitting across from MAHER again. Would they revisit the argument? Would they laugh about how intense the moment became? Or would they simply agree to disagree and move forward? For now, none of those questions have been answered. What is clear is that MAHER has not forgotten the actor, and despite years of separation, he apparently hasn't stopped hoping that Afolk might eventually reconsider. Real Time has built its reputation on uncomfortable conversations. The controversy also highlights why MAHER's show remains different from many other celebrity interview programs. Guests appearing on Real Time aren't necessarily guaranteed a comfortable conversation. MAHER routinely pushes political figures, entertainers, authors, and commentators into controversial territory. Sometimes those discussions create fascinating television. Other times, they produce arguments that become the story themselves. The Afolk confrontation belongs firmly in the second category. The show has continued for decades, with MAHER using his platform to challenge both conservative and liberal viewpoints. Its official website continues to feature episodes, guests, and clips from the program. That environment makes a folk's return potentially fascinating, but also unpredictable. Could a folk ever return? At this point, a comeback appears uncertain. Maher's comments suggest that he would welcome a folk back, but an invitation is only one part of the equation. The actor would have to decide that returning to the same stage where the infamous argument occurred is worthwhile. There is also the possibility that the passage of time has changed the situation. 12 years can dramatically alter public perspectives. Political debates evolve, careers change, and people often become less interested in winning old arguments. Maher himself appears to recognize that. His suggestion that there may now be a middle ground indicates that he doesn't necessarily expect the two men to suddenly agree. Instead, he seems interested in whether they can have a conversation without repeating the intensity of the original encounter. Fans will be watching. The revelation is likely to fuel plenty of speculation among real-time viewers. Some fans may hope a folk eventually accepts another invitation. Others may argue that the original confrontation was simply too uncomfortable to revisit. Either way, the story demonstrates the unusual staying power of one television argument. Most late-night interviews disappear from public memory within days. This one didn't. More than a decade later, Maher is still being asked about it, and a folk's absence from the program has become part of the story itself. For Maher, the situation seems less about revenge and more about unfinished business. He continues to respect a folk. He continues to invite him, and he appears willing to have another conversation if the actor ever changes his mind. A reunion could become must-see television. If a folk ever does walk back onto the real-time stage, the appearance would almost certainly generate major attention. The audience would want to know whether the old disagreement would resurface. Maher would undoubtedly have questions. A folk would have an opportunity to explain his perspective more than a decade later. And perhaps the biggest surprise would be discovering that two people who once had such a heated disagreement can eventually sit down, talk, and recognize that disagreement doesn't necessarily have to mean permanent hostility. For now, however, that reunion remains hypothetical. Maher's latest comments confirm that the door is open on his side, but a folk remains the one who has to decide whether to walk through it. Until then, the 2014 confrontation remains one of real-time with Bill Maher's most memorable moments. And Ben a Folk remains the Hollywood star Maher says he still hasn't been able to bring back. After all these years, one thing is certain: the argument